day, everybody. It is Calxiyn here, and if you guys enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe for more of the Promised Neverland videos. Today we are going to do our reaction and discussion, but just so you guys know, if you guys want to see my full reaction, it is up for patrons and YouTube membership members. That is a reaction with the timers and subtitles, so you guys could sync up the full reaction, the full thing, but this is going to be my coolest moments, my biggest moments reaction, and then afterwards, we are going to do a discussion. So if you're down with that, let's just get into it. Let's go. Like hair dye in this world, but those must be the older kids. Oh my god, come on, you don't bury the lead here. I want to see the kids, or I guess not the kids, the adults. No, but there's nice people in the town. We can't do that. Oh no, what if it's like Emma being against Norman because the demons aren't human, but they're persons? Isn't there something that they could create that stimulates like whatever the humans give them? You know? Uh-oh, this is interesting. Oh, no, 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 no. No, and Emma's realizing that everyone's just on board with this, but what about... Yeah, what about Mujika and Sonju then? Like, what's their secret? Were they lying? No, it's not! No, Emma doesn't think it's great. Emma doesn't think it's great. Ray knows it too. I know. Exactly! That's what I was saying. Oh, we need them. Exactly, and we could take their DNA and help the other people. Yes, exactly. Uh-oh. Oh, sir. Oh, God. Oh, well, that's... So she's eating demons? Oh my god, it's continuing! No! Oh god. What? Evil-blooded girl? Wait, what? What? Wait, whoa. Wait, but that was the name of the temple. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, okay. This is bad. Like, this is bad. This is bad. This is really bad. Okay. Well. Wow, okay. Oh no. Oh god, does Neverland do end credit scenes? I can never remember. Fuck. Things are actually getting really interesting. All right, everybody, let us get into the discussion now, and I'm really excited for this one because I think we're getting into some really interesting territory. It seems like the theme of the anime that at least I'm watching, like the winter 2021 anime that I'm watching, is like different ideologies are tearing our friends apart. Just between this and like Attack on Titan, like I feel like we're getting into such an interesting place, and I genuinely like kind of feel bad for the manga readers who just abandoned ship. Like, again, I understand why. We talked about it last week. I'm not going to go into it again. But I feel like that if this conflict didn't necessarily happen in the manga, like, this is very interesting. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't, but, like, I find this very compelling. And I feel like that it's just, I know Attack on Titan didn't invent it, but that's something that I've been loving about this season of Attack on Titan. And so now I'm like, like, both of my anime are kind of doing something like that, where the main characters, or, like, the group of friends, I guess, they all have these different ideologies about what they think should be done, what they think is right, right, what they think is just, and now it's like, it's tearing me apart, and so I feel like that's really, really great, and I'm interested in that. Also, I didn't know if I mentioned this, but I watched a very interesting video about, like, the manga stuff, if that makes sense, by Mother's Basement, and basically what he was saying was that there could be a butterfly effect, multiple timeline thing going on where the manga, live action movie, and then this anime adaptation are all alternate timelines where some character made like a different choice or something like that happened, and then the path like deviated, right? And so I actually find that really, really interesting. I love shit like that. I know that not everyone does. I still understand the desire that the manga readers have to see the manga be adapted to the screen. Again, I talked about that last week. I understand, but I love freaky stuff like that. Like, I love weird stuff like that when the writers do, like, oh, well, this was one timeline, now I'm gonna write another book where this is another timeline, or I'm gonna write another book from a different character's perspective, but like in the same, you know what I mean? And so I think that that's like super, super cool. And if that's true, like, I think that that's really interesting, because then you would sort of read the manga, you would watch the movie and the anime, and you would see how all of the parts differ, because like, that's something that has always sort of gotten me about stuff like, oh, like remakes, like a live action remake of something, is that I understand in the case of the manga, right? Like in the case of the manga, people want it adapted into an anime so they can see it on screen. But when you have something that is already on screen, like say Death Note, for example, right? And then you make it into a live action movie, like I personally don't see any value in keeping that the same. And I would love to do a video about this because we were talking about this last night, but it's so funny that you have things like Disney remakes, for example, and everyone's like, no, like why would they do this? Like there's nothing different about this. Like why would they make something exactly the same but worse? Like but somehow worse in live action. It's interesting to me because when you have a anime remake that goes into live action and stuff like that, people have the complete opposite reaction. They're like, why would they do this? This isn't the same at all. And so it's very interesting how people don't want things to be different, but they also don't want things to be the same. And personally, where I land on that, especially like more so with the Disney remake side and stuff like that, but even like if they wanted to do like anime, like live action movies and things, I personally like don't see the appeal in it being like one for one exactly the same as the animated version, because the animated version still exists. And so I don't see any value in not changing anything. I would much rather have them do like Beauty and the Beast, but it's an alternate timeline or something like that, or like Lion King, but an alternate timeline, instead of them just doing like live action Lion King that's basically exactly the same as the original, and it's not live action because the lions aren't real. And so like, you know what I mean, guys? It's just such a weird situation. It's just such a weird position to be in. So yeah, I am all for freaky timeline nonsense. I know that I'm pretty much like the exception to that, but I don't know. Like, I just think that it's sad that now we've gotten into like, this is the real version, this is the definitive version, when so much of our history, when you think about myths or fairy tales, like 100 versions of Cinderella, 100 versions of Little Red Riding Hood. There's Little Red where she dies, where she's saved by the huntsman, where she saves herself, right? And like, you know, people, I don't think back then like had that many problems with it. It's like the version of Little Red Riding Hood you liked it, you held on to it, but if other people wanted to make other versions, those versions just like existed, right? I guess we sort of have that with fan fiction, but I mean like in a somewhat like official capacity. You know what I mean? And so it's very interesting when you think about it, just how we've gotten from like, oh, we're gonna make 100 versions of this same myth or this same play, and now it's like, no, like this version is the version, and if you change anything, like, right? Like people get so angry. But yeah, that's just my little rant about all that. But let's talk about the actual episode now. But yeah, that's something I've been thinking about a lot. I kind of want to do a video about it, more on the Disney, again, on the Disney side of things, just because like I find that like whole thing just really, really interesting. Like you have a company that has made like fairy tale movies, but they won't try another version of the fairy tale. Like they'll stick to their same version, despite fairy tales inherently being about having multiple versions that came from like the common folk. But anyways, very off topic. I love the animation in this episode. Like I thought that the facial expressions were done really well. There's another picture of Emma's face later on that I'll show you guys that I thought was just really, really good. I think it's when she's talking to like the crew, right, in the house. I think she has this like disgusted, horrified expression, and it was really good. And so I really like this scene between them reuniting, and I like this. I can't believe it, you're alive. I feel like that even though she tried to tell the kids, like, hey, we'll see normal Norman again, don't worry. Like, I feel like that she was very optimistic in front of the kids, but deep down, she was having concerns about whether Norman was alive or not, and I talked about that a couple of weeks ago, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, like, it's almost like Emma puts on this very optimistic facade, but then on the inside, like, she doesn't necessarily believe in her own positivity, and I think that's kind of interesting, right? Like, I feel like that with all the Norman stuff, she kept being like, yeah, like, Norman wouldn't want us to be sad. Like, when Norman gets back, like, you can't have those glum looks on your faces, and then Norman's just like, is Norman alive? Is Norman dead? Right? Like, that's how she was thinking about him anyway. But he's alive, so he's here, but I feel like that he's not the same Norman that we necessarily remember. I feel something very sketchy is happening with Norman, actually. I was sent to a different farm, and then he realizes, I like this, that he touches the side of her cheek, and then he realizes that her ear's cut off. I feel like that was really, really nice as a scene. I love Ray just, like, bitch slapping him. I thought that this was so in character, but yeah, I sort of see what's happening here as a very, like, Attack on Titan, like, oh, it's our, like, trinity of friends, like Aaron, Mikasa, and Armin, and we're all having ideological differences, and we're soon gonna break apart. Like, I feel I get those vibes here. Again, I don't want to compare it to Attack on Titan too much. I promise I watch other things that aren't Attack on Titan. You guys have to keep in mind that watching these two things at the exact same time, right, like, it does, you know what I mean? It does make the comparison easier to draw in my mind, but I thought that this was really, really nice as a scene. I liked that Ray is still maintaining, like, you guys, I'm so happy that I'm alive, and, like, I didn't let you guys basically, like, let me die, right? Because he had that whole thing with the fire and the flame, so I feel like that this was really good. I don't understand why they all took off their masks. I guess this was just so, like, we could see them and whatever, but, like, I feel like it was so oddly dangerous for them to do something like this, because I'm like, what if somebody sees you? But yeah, I really like their designs, except there is kind of a weird uncanniness about them, I guess. Like, more so her design, like, I like it, but she doesn't really seem to fit in with the rest of the characters. At the same time, we haven't seen that many adults, so maybe that's it. I just wonder, like, how did she dye her hair and all that stuff? And I wonder, right, because we know that some of the kids got, like, special privileges, right? Like, we know that Ray, for example, he asks Isabel for the camera and stuff, and so I sort of wonder, like, could that be something that's a clue, like, that they have dyed hair, and so is it possible that they were, like, little rats in their own houses, right? Like, I want to believe that they are a resistance group, but the more that I look at them, the more I'm concerned that they're actually, like, working with bad humans, I guess, that do want to uphold the demon system, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, with Isabel and those types of demons, like, even though they say that they want to kill the demons, I'm a little concerned that they may be being manipulated by a higher authority or something, or that there has been a promise made, like, hey, we'll keep you guys alive if you return the Gracefield kids, and this is all some sort of facade, or they offer the same deal to these adults, I guess, or to these, like, young adults. I'm guessing they're, like, 16 to 20, right? Like, they may have offered the same deal that they offered to Isabel to them, like, hey, if you guys just capture these kids, we'll let you go to the human world, and so I'm a little worried about that. I know that's, like, a big reach, just consider, like, the only proof I have is her hair, but at the same time, I sort of wonder, right, like, if they have gotten, like, special clothes and stuff like that, like, could that be some sort of sign? Like, their reactions to seeing Norman alive, and I thought that this scene was really nice, because you see the, I guess, like, the distinction between everyone who is happy, like, throughout this whole scene, as Norman's explaining his plan, but then you see on the opposite side, you have Emma, and you have, like, how horrified she is at all this, and then Ray noticing, like, her horror, I guess, is the best way to explain it, right? But everyone's so happy in this scene, and I just want to talk about this line of dialogue and, like, this section, because I feel like that this could also have some clues. We were discovered by the ones from the farm. Everyone barely got out of there safely, right? So they're talking about the shelter, and then they talk about Norman. Where were you all this time? So here's the thing, like, I don't want to say they're lying about the test site, but I'm a little concerned about what the test site could actually be, right? Because we did see those adult male soldiers, and so I'm sort of wondering, like, what if the test site, like, what if what happened to them was indeed true, but at the same time, like, that test site was actually to make them sympathize with the demon-human, like, system or something. Like, I'm just very sketchy about their intentions. Like, on one hand, this kind of looks like more of a freedom fighting type symbol. On the other hand, I don't know, and when you actually look at this, does this not look like the window that's in the end credits song? Right, you have like the window right here, then you have, I don't know what you call it, but there's those things over the windows, right? Not the roof, but like some windows have a little like, right, have a little like edge on the top of them, and then like these kind of look like the things where you open the window, right, and that looks like the bottom of the window. We'll look at the OP maybe for that, but yeah, like otherwise, I don't know, that's what it sort of reminds me of, that this sort of shape reminds me of a window of the house, and so that would actually like concern me, right? Like if he's like, oh yeah, like I was over here, right? I don't know if that's the I was over here mark or if that's the resistance group mark. I guess if it was the testing site mark, that would kind of make sense, but even that sort of concerns me just because I'm like, and I'm doing this to rotate the image, by the way. I want to see if it looks like any different upside down. I guess like it could just be the brand from that area, but at the same time, like, I don't know, yeah, it doesn't really look any different when it's like this. It kind of looks like it could be like a little hot air balloon, if I had to guess, right? Like you have this as the thing for the hot air balloon, the basket, and then this is the balloon, and then that's a little symbol for the balloon. But otherwise, like that doesn't really look like anything else to me, and so I can't really say. But yeah, I just feel like Norman's story is a little sketchy, right? That night, Mom took me to the gate. There I was handed over to the researchers, okay, the farm demons and adults, right? Okay, so again, maybe my human liaison theory is coming true. I would actually say that my human liaison theory is correct. So if you guys have been following and watching for the past couple weeks, I've had this theory that there are humans working in cooperation with the demons. Not just the moms, not just the soldiers, but like actual, like, I call them human resources as a little inside joke, right? And so I feel like that mentioning the adults, right, there could be that human organization. And we also get that idea from Minerva calling himself James Ratchery, right? And so what I'm thinking is that those adults are actually like ratcheries, if that makes sense. And so the farm demons and the adults executed repeated drugging and experiments on the children. So they're talking about doing the meat, but then they basically had side effects, and we have like the mutant ninja turtles. I don't know how else to explain it, but yeah, the kids got abnormal side effects, I guess. Or, oh god, what's that thing? There's this superhero movie with the bald guy. Is it like X-Men or whatever? What's the movie with the mutant kids? And there's a special school or something with the academy, like for all the kids, right? Like it's the guy, it's the bald guy. And I remember because there was this parody where like Elsa's parents brought her to the bald guy and they were like, welcome to the such and such. I don't remember what it is. You guys know what I mean, right? And so yeah, they were experimented on, they got powers, woohoo, right? Then you were experimented on too. I only took tests, so I'm fine. I find that very sketchy as well. I find that kind of sus that he said that, right? With the help of a supporter of Minerva, I destroyed Lambda and escaped with the other children, right? A supporter, he called himself Smee, right? So we are going in with the Neverland stuff, like actually, right? Because obviously the show is called Promised Neverland, but they haven't really made that many references to it, and so this I find actually kind of interesting because now we're getting into like actual like code names like for the characters and stuff, which kind of means that Neverland must exist as an actual story in the human world side. He was the one that gave Sister Crone the pen, right? So that sort of explains away like how the whole pen thing happened, because that was something that I think that we've talked about before, like how did Crone get the pen to them? Like it seems kind of random, right? But I don't think that he did it with Crone's knowledge. Like it sounds like that he basically gave it to Crone somehow, and that was almost like an accident. But to have given that to Crone, again, I think that that fits in with my theory that Smee could have been like James Ratchery's brother or something, let's say. Or yeah, I guess brother, because they're saying he, uncle, cousin, right? You guys know what I mean about that. Again, this is something that I find very, very sus. Using the experiment data, I created a drug that will cause demons to disintegrate. Now, or degenerate, disintegrate, like they're Grimm from Ruby, they just go wee. No, okay, so here's the thing about this. On one hand, I did see some complaints that this was like rushed or this is just pulled out of his ass. On the other hand, they have previously established that demons will degenerate without eating humans. We already knew that from last episode, so I don't think that it's that much of an ass pull. I don't think that I would criticize that exactly, but I do think that Norman's adventures, if true, at the laboratory would have been really interesting to actually see. So I'm not gonna say that we're not gonna get a flashback yet. Like, I could still hold out hope for something like that. But I have like 2 reasons, right, why they wouldn't do a flashback, or I guess 3 reasons, okay? 1, they're going to do a flashback, just not this episode. Great. Okay, 2, what Norman's saying isn't true, and that's why they didn't show us a flashback. And then 3, they're just really rushing through the season, right? Which I've heard some people say, do I necessarily agree with that? It's sort of like, right? I don't know. It's hard to say, right? I feel like I can't really say until it's done, because like, would I love to see Norman's adventures at the laboratory? Sure, but what if he's full of bullshit, and then our flashback is seeing why he's full of bullshit later, like what he was actually doing, right? Like, I could see something like that. So honestly, I feel like that it's just a wait and see thing, but if it does turn out that Norman's story's like 100% airtight true, I do wish that we could have seen that. It would have sort of been nice to do this thing. I mean, I guess you would have known that Norman was alive, but they could have done like alternating perspectives, or they could have had this episode just be a flashback episode of what Norman was doing, I guess. So let's talk about this. I think that there's actually a lot of foreshadowing towards this, like, I don't know what you call it exactly. Like, obviously it's a statue, but this idol or this figure, I think that there's a lot pointing to the fact that this is actually Mujika, and we'll talk about it later, but Norman calls her the evil-blooded girl, and this is the evil-blooded temple. So if not her herself being a god, I sort of wonder if it's possible that she could be like the religious leader of this temple, right? Like, some people say that in other translations it's just like the heretic temple or the heretic girl, but at the same time, considering the fact that there's some sort of idol here, I would say that they're actually giving their sacrifices, or I guess not sacrifices, it's just a couple apples, right? They're offerings. Let's put it that way. They're offerings, right, to her in some way, and I feel like that this was sort of hinted at with the purple cloak here, and so we don't know yet, right? I think that there's a heavy implication at the end of this episode, but I think that considering like the purple here, like the purple could be a representation for her hairstyle and stuff. What that means exactly, I don't know. Like, I'm still kind of like, right? Like, I don't know what outcome or what meaning that would have necessarily, right? I guess it could mean that she has magic powers, right? Especially with the amulet. But in terms of what that plays into, I guess I don't know, like, I guess I'm just not sure, right? And we'll talk about it later, because they don't eat humans, yet they still stay alive. And last week, if you guys remember, right, I talked about, like, what if there's another way? Like, what if you could just make them vitamins so they don't need to eat humans anymore, right? Like, we take vitamins to get nutrients that we need, right? Like, have they just not thought about that? Or if it's impossible, right? Like, have the scientists been so busy being, like, mandated or ordered by like the higher ups, right? Like the king and like the humans at the very, very top of this whole operation, that they've never investigated the idea of like dissecting the demon genome, right? And like working through it to find out if they could make a drug to prevent degeneration. Is it because the elite at the very top of the system continue to benefit from this system and they wouldn't benefit from vitamins? Like, they would only benefit from this farm system, they would only benefit from continuing to maintain this level of poverty? Like, could that be it? I feel like that could be a very interesting aspect to all this, is that it is possible for them to stop without eating any humans. I feel like that's a very interesting aspect of all this, because I feel like that it's very possible that there could be a way that they don't need to eat humans anymore, but the elite benefit so much from a system where humans are like manufactured in this way, in a way that vitamins or like a drug that the demons could take like wouldn't be as beneficial anymore. So I've talked about this in the past couple discussions, right, about like, oh, I think that the end goal here is for them to fight against the system, and I still think that that could absolutely be the case. Like, despite Norman and the crew wanting trying to basically like kill the demons, I feel like that will get into a very like Attack on Titan-y, again, sorry to say, type of situation, right? Where we get into this position where it's like, you know, we want to fight against you, but then we recognize that you're just normal civilians, and really the true problem is the oppressors at the very top of the system, right? So I feel like that's where we could be going in here, like killing these demons, or I guess degenerating them so then they can be killed or kill each other, right? Like that doesn't really solve anything, but what would solve something is everyone working together to dismantle the system, right? To take down the oppressors. That's what I like, right? But we have a really interesting like little evolution chart here. So it's just a bunch of scribbles. So I feel like that either Norman wrote this or this is something that's actually in the temple, because we have something interesting here, right? We have sun, swirly, I'm guessing, like maybe this is like wind, sunlight, so I'm guessing there's sun, moon, and then something in between, and from the sun and the moon and the something in between we get demons. I wonder if this could be like, are the demons just aliens? Like, we talk about this like, oh, it's a fantasy drama psychological thriller, but what if this is actually like a sci-fi fantasy type situation? Because again, like I keep talking about like, oh, like genomes and drugs and stuff, right? Like that's not really magic, but even Norman's talking about drugs now, right? And so I wonder if like it could just have been sort of, I don't know, not a trick necessarily. I think we're getting into a blend of sci-fi and fantasy, maybe. That's my interpretation of it anyway. And so then you see again different demons, and then you see more different demons, and I think there's another picture of like what the max forms are that they can turn into. But yeah, it's kind of hard to tell like what's what exactly. Like, is this a bug or is this an eyeball? This looks like a snake. This looks like more of a person-y demon, whereas these look more like, this looks more like a fishy demon. I actually wonder, like, what if the fish that they've been eating all this time, they're not fish, but they're demon fish, right? They don't know what they are. They've been calling them, like, slimy boys or whatever they've been saying, right? And so I wonder, like, what if some of the things that they've encountered aren't actually food, right? It's not actually a chicken or a fish, but it's actually, like, a demon form in some way, right? And then we see, like, we've seen this demon type before. This isn't that weird. Apparently the snake, like, I don't know, the snake didn't evolve into anything, I guess. And then we have some different forms. But yeah, like, I think that we've definitely seen these types of demons before, but I guess that the, like, Mujika and Sonjuns of the world stay as, like, this little one, right? It's only the ones that are fed the big brains that grow into these big ones. And so these are the more, like, human-looking demons, I think, right here. Would love to know what's going on over there, though. By continuing to eat humans, the demons could maintain their current form and intellect. That's why our brains, exactly. That's why they made us take tests to develop our brains. Then if they don't eat humans, all demons would look like the wild ones. And so again, I feel like that everyone was like, oh, like, they pulled it out of their ass. Like, I saw that comment going on a few times, or I guess, like saw it, like, retweeted and whatever, right? But I feel like that's not true, because we heard the old guy already talk about the fact that the town would become wild. So I feel like that this isn't the stretch that people think it is, I guess. And then Ray does, like, say, like, no, like, we'd fare better against, like, the wild demons, right, than a big, smart demon. And if the demons lose their intelligence, they will start attacking each other, right? Like, that's what the old guy was worried about in the first place last episode. I'm increasing production of the drug, but even with what I have on hand right now, I can degenerate all the demons living in this town, right? And you see that Emma, I don't think, feels comfortable with this plan, and I'll point out all the times in the background, but I was really rooting for her not to be comfortable with this, because I don't think that she should be. Once they come in contact with this drug, they will never be able to regain intelligence, and so, like, that's the problem, though. There's this Regina George meme, and I don't know the actual line from the movie, so, like, do not ask me, but it's this meme, and so she goes like, oh, so you admit it, and then, like, whatever you want, like, happens, like, afterwards, or I guess, right? Like, and so in this case, I'm like, so you admit it, they do have intelligence, because you can't do that. Like, you can't acknowledge their intelligence and their personhood, but then be like, oh, okay, so it's okay to kill them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like, so you admit it, Norman, they are, like, persons with intelligence, right? So how can you guys just do this. When that happens, they won't just attack each other. They won't be able to run the farms either. Like, in theory, but they're still humans at the helm of all this, right? And so I feel like we're burying the lead about that too a little bit. I guess the humans wouldn't have any need to produce, though. Like, I guess the humans wouldn't have any need to, like, keep it going if demons were extinct, but, like, still. And I feel like that this is really the crux of it, right? Like, Norman is a changed person because of what he allegedly, what he possibly experienced in this laboratory. We still don't know if the laboratory stuff is true, but if it is true, it's because of what Norman has seen that I feel like he's changed a lot as a person. Then he just, like, throws Emma's words back in her face, right? And so I get it. Like, I don't think Norman's evil. Let me just say that. I don't think Norman's evil. Norman just has a different ideology, right? And so it's not necessarily an evil one, but we're getting into, like, those sorts of shades of gray, right? And so it's like, I don't think Norman is a villain, but I think that him and Emma are definitely gonna come into some type of conflict. We will make the demons extinct. There will be no more Neverland. And so I feel like that again, right? Like, he has been, I guess, taught the concept of the Neverland, right? Like, I'm assuming that maybe that's what the people in the human world outside of all this see this as. Like, again, it's a place where kids never grow up. And so I feel like that that's really interesting that they're bringing more of the Neverland stuff into it because they didn't really before. Let's establish a paradise for all of us in this demon world. Here's the other thing. Does Norman not understand that there's a human world? Because he seems to be content with just extincting the demons and living over here, but Emma's whole plan was to go to the human world and be with the humans, right? And obviously we find out why that's not exactly gonna work either, because even if all of the humans went to the human world, the demons would still be extinct. So I think that my idea about the vitamins is actually the way to go right now. Unless there's a different way that Mujika and Sonju are doing this that basically has to do more with, like, magic or something, right? And then we see, though, like, even though it seems like they're maintaining their human forms anyway, it's strange to think about because you still have Sonju wanting to eat a human anyway. And so I feel like that's the other hurdle, is even if you did introduce vitamins, like, would the demons, like, want to take, like, would you want to take a vitamin over having a steak, right? Like, maybe you should take a vitamin over having a steak, right? Like, we can talk about that a little bit. Like, you should, but, like, maybe you won't want to. I feel like that's kind of another barrier, right? But if they don't have access to humans, they won't really have a choice and they'll have to take the vitamins. I really liked this section as well, just because it seems like everyone is agreeing with this, not only because they think that this is great, right, but also because Emma won't have to carry a huge burden anymore because Norman's here with a plan. And so I feel like that's very interesting because we get more into that later in that other scene, that they're not just doing it because they see this, like, vision for the future, they're also doing it for me, and that somehow makes it worse, right? And so we see, like, Emma in the background a couple times. Let me see if I can find it, right? Like, everyone's smiling and she's just like, right? And then again, we have that sort of facial expression over here, right? Like, everyone's like, isn't it great, Emma? And she's like, sure, yeah, great. And, like, Ray's just like, I can see right through your bullshit, and I picked up on that right away. And again, as Norman says that he can give the word tomorrow, right? Like, everyone, I think, is mostly happy. Like, everyone's mostly happy except for Ray, right, in the background. I think that everyone's actually, this guy actually kind of looks panicked. Maybe that'll be interesting if this random dude also picks up on the fact that Emma's, like, a little unhappy, but Emma's just like, right? She has this look on her face, and then obviously Ray's back here, so I think that that's interesting. To begin with, I want to degenerate all the demons in this town, and you see, like, everyone's happy faces as they're talking about literally annihilating all of the demons, right? And so I feel like that's a really nice contrast, because I get it. Like, what Norman is saying, is it technically true? Like, yes, like, we could have freedom, we could have safety, but at the same time, it seems like that the kids don't necessarily, like, feel the entire consequence of that action. It reminds me a lot of, like, the child soldier brainwashing, again, from Attack on Titan, and obviously they don't need to be brainwashed. They've seen what the demons have done. They know that the demons eat humans. It's not necessarily brainwashing them to believe something that isn't true, right? But they're only focusing on half of what is true. that demons eat humans, that they've been running the farms. They're only focusing on that half. They're not focusing on the other half that Emma is also thinking about as well, right? So I wouldn't necessarily say it's brainwashing, right? But they're all still on the, oh, like most demons are scary, most demons will eat us, and so therefore, right, like Norman's plan sounds great, whereas Emma is thinking, but on the other hand, right, like demons are still persons, like just like how, you know, we're persons to them because we have intelligence, or I guess the demons that they have met, right? Like that's what I'm saying. Like I'm a person and a friend to Mujika because she recognized my personhood even though I'm a human, and Mujika is a friend to me because I recognized her personhood even though she is a demon, right? And so that's kind of what I mean by that. But yeah, it seems like that they've thrown out their interaction with Sonju and Mujika just out the window, and that they're just like, yeah, kill the demons, and I'm just like, And again, you have this statue here, and so I feel like that this is representative of a couple things. You see the apples, and that's a reminder of the old man from last episode who was just worried about his family, who just wanted to bring some offerings to the god to make things better, I guess you could say, right? And then we have like the actual god herself, and if that'll turn out to be Mujika, and I feel like that this is getting really interesting. I like this scene with Emma looking at the amulet, because I'm actually really, really interested in how this is gonna become like a thing, right? Like, what are they gonna use this for? And so I really like this scene between her and Ray. They talk about like, oh, it's great to see Norman. I thought I'd never see him again, which I think is true, but Ray's like, is it really good to see Norman? And like, you know, they're like, what? Like, how can you say that, Ray? But at the same time, they're more talking about Norman's plan. Is it good to run into Norman when Norman has been so warped in a way? I think that that's Ray's point. If there are no demons, we don't have to run or hide anymore, but that's not the future you want, is it, right? And so I really like this expression, right, that she has right here. And so they go through how she's feeling a little bit. I don't want to kill the demons. Everyone would be happy. They weren't just thinking about themselves. They were happy because they care for me, right? So she's talking about all the kids. Like, they were happy not only to imagine a world where they don't need to worry about the demons, but they were also happy because she wouldn't need to bear such a high responsibility, right? And Emma says, I hate myself for that because she doesn't want to be used as a scapegoat in order to execute this plan. I don't want to be eaten. I don't want them to be eaten. I don't want anyone to get shipped or hunted. They're our enemy, but I realized when we came here, demons also have names. They think. They have precious family. So again, I'm talking about that idea of what makes a person versus what makes like a human, right? Like just because something isn't human doesn't mean that it's not a person. And I talked about that last week. So I feel really good about our discussions considering I feel like I really hit on the themes and we're able to analyze the themes of where the show is going, right? Isn't there an option besides annihilation? And again, I think this is a piece of foreshadowing because when you look at this, right, isn't there an option besides annihilation? And right on that subtitle, what shot is right there, and it's of who we think is Mujika, right? If it turns out to be true that this like god or idol in the temple is actually supposed to be representative of her, that it could be a sign and a piece of foreshadowing that she is actually the other option. I want a path where we don't fight, and again, gripping on the necklace also has a lot of metaphorical meaning as well, like symbolism and stuff, right? I think that she's thinking of Mujika and Sonju there, but everyone wants a future to annihilate the demons, and it's going to be the same result. If the demons can't retain their form unless they keep eating humans, even if we escape and go to the human world, that will make them go extinct. And so I feel like that's a very important point, right? Because again, we're getting into like, oh, if we all escape, they'll all die anyway, or if we do what Norman says, they'll all die anyway. So you could think, what does it matter if there's no other option? Before Ray starts talking about the other options, I do actually like his scene that he has here with Emma, and that's him basically saying like, hey, your buried feelings weren't really so buried after all, and they'll probably explode and come out of you at the worst possible time. And so I wonder if that could actually be like some kind of hint towards the fact that the multiple timeline thing that I talked about is right. Like, is there a timeline in the manga when Emma actually like blew up her feelings and something went terribly wrong? I think that maybe this could be a hint to the fact that Ray is considering like an alternative future and that one could exist. But I just really like the sentiment anyway, like, hey, if you bottle everything up inside, like, you'll eventually blow up. Like, I feel like that whole thing, just to be honest with your feelings, is actually a really good lesson to to impart anyway. And he says when that happens, you and everyone else will be in danger, right? And so it's better to talk it through now, to tell Norman the truth now. And Emma says, I don't want annihilation. I want to find a way without conflict. And so she seems pretty resolved in that, right? And then she's like, oh, but I can't decide just based on what I want, so I don't know what the right thing to do is. And then Ray basically is like, hey, I don't either. And they have this funny like comedy scene, but I kind of cut that out just because there's nothing really to say about that. Like I thought it was nice for their character, like relationship and development and stuff. But Ray's actually not lying per se. He says that he doesn't know what the right thing to do is either, but at the same time, he does think about Sonju and Mujika as well. And so I think that that's interesting, right? Because he's just like, hey, maybe there is another way when you think about it, right? And so I really like that interaction between them. Let's take that and go talk to Norman, right? And then Emma mentions them both. Right, the two of them haven't eaten humans, and so I feel like that Ray kind of knew, but he was just trying to guide her along as well. Think about it. Would Norman's drug work on these exceptions? If Norman knows about them, we could ask why such exceptions exist. Depending on the circumstances, we might get a clue on how demons and humans can coexist. And so I feel like that this is gonna be really about like getting into the genome of why Mujika and Sonju are different, right? Whether it's magic, whether it's their biology or their genetics, and then taking that like genetic and then injecting it into all the other demons so they too do not need to eat humans anymore. Now, would that solve everything? Not necessarily, but it could allow the kids to escape into the human world without demons going extinct. Because if they don't have any other choice but to take the injection or to take the vitamins or whatever we want to call it, right? If they have no other choice, then they'll just like continue on. Like even if demons enjoy hunting humans, or even if demons want to eat a human like Sonju, right? Like even if that is the case, right? If all the humans escape, they won't have any other choice. So I feel like plan one should be getting that sort of like injection or vitamin that I keep talking about and giving it to everyone. Like if it's like sort of a drug like Norman has where it seems to go into the air, it doesn't seem like they actually have to like contaminate their food or anything, but it's just sort of like if you open it in the middle of the town, they'll all degenerate type of thing. I mean, I don't know, but that's kind of how like it seemed like anyway, that they would just drop it on everyone, right? Or spill it on everyone. And like if they do that, so first of all, it's the vitamin. So if they make a vitamin that does that, they get it to everyone, like the humans can just escape and then the demons won't be able to eat humans anyway, but they'll still like live. I really like this scene, especially with the sunrise. You can do the impossible. That's your specialty, right? Let's create a future we won't regret. And I like how the sun comes up in that scene. I just thought that that was really, really nice. And again, with the future thing, like creating a future that we won't regret, I do have to wonder, like, what happened at the end of the manga, and if it's possible that this is, again, pointing to another, like, timeline thing, that this is actually a parallel timeline, because what if they made a future that they do regret? Like, what if that is what happened in the manga, is that they did do something, but they regret what they did at the end? Like, what if it didn't actually go this way in terms of, oh, let's, you know, like, fight against this, let's make a world where demons and humans could coexist, right? Like, what if they did just all escape to the human world and then that was it? Like, what if this is the timeline where they actually like have almost a happier ending? So you'll notice the guy with the paper bag on their head, they aren't actually here, and I think that that has something to do with the experiment that happens later on that we see Norman talking about. I wonder if he's experimenting on the person with the paper bag, or if the person with the paper bag is actually someone that we know. But they say, yeah, that was Zazie who killed the demons, right? And so I feel like Zazie's not actually here with them because this is like Cilantro, or whatever this guy's name was, Vincent and Barbara, right? And so I feel like that Zazie, the one that killed the demons, is the one being experimented on. But I wonder if like seeing their face would tip us off to something, and that's why they had the paper bag, or they are like malformed in some way, and that has basically made it so they don't want to show the face yet. Basically, they don't want to show the audience their face yet because it's going to be a surprise, like that Norman has been experimenting on Zazie, and then Zazie like looks somewhat different somehow. I'm not exactly sure yet. I want to get to the experiment thing, but I think that we should just touch on this scene a little bit. The Barbara, Vincent, and then introducing all of them. Like, I feel like that was a really nice scene. I kind of like how they call Norman boss, even though, like, when you think about it, like, it's so weird just because all of them are older than Norman, right? But they seem to treat Norman with a high degree of respect. I also like this conversation because they're just talking about, like, oh, what was Norman like as a kid? Ha ha ha. And then Barbara goes, like, psycho on her later. So I feel like that was a good way to introduce them as, like, friendly characters, you know, like tee hee hee, ha ha ha, right? But then have it so they're also like have very like dark underneaths, if that makes sense. Because you see this guy's face when he's like, man, I can't wait to kill a demon. And like with her, it's the exact same thing, right? And so you have this introduction of, oh, these are nice people, but they have been pushed into these desperate means where they now think in a twisted way. He saved the children from the mass production farms and hid them in a safe place, making it look like demons stole them, of course. And so it seems like our theory from last week and then the week before, that it could actually have been like basically fake robberies, right? The resistance group are just pretending to be demons, taking the kids, and then like being like, oh yeah, the demons stole the kids, right? When it actually was the resistance group, and then that's what those would be, I guess, like publicized to the public as, right? Like, oh yeah, the demons are stealing, because we talk about that in, I think, again, last episode, they were saying that there's been a series of robberies lately, and I was like, I don't think those were demon robberies. I think that those were resistance robberies, and it turns out that they were. The only thing that I'm thinking of is that the mass production farm thing, I'm a little concerned about that, and I'm wondering about it too, because I seem to be under the impression that the farms are like free-ranged kids where kids are just allowed to be kids, right? But when they say mass production, what I'm thinking of is if we want to think of the equivalent like in our human world, right? Like just like cows or chickens, and they're just in cages, they live their life in a cage, they die in a cage, right? And so I just wonder about the capacity of these children that Norman has hid in a safe place. Like, are they able to feed themselves? Are they able to speak? Like, I'm just a little worried about them, right? Like, I'm worried about them on a can they take care of themselves level, like wherever Norman hid them, will they fight back? Like, will they be able to be safe there? Is somebody with them to take care of them, right? Like, I'm sure Norman didn't just leave them there, right? But at the same time, like, I just sort of wonder about that, because I feel like there was something that we were talking about where, like, the children from the mass production farms, they would basically be like the equivalent of like babies. Like, you would need to be able to save them, if that makes sense, because they don't have the same, like, they haven't had the same treatment as the kids in the farms, and so maybe like physically they're not that strong, right? Maybe their muscles are weak if they're like sitting in the same place, like maybe they can't talk or communicate, right? So I'm a little bit worried about them just on the level of you hid them in a safe place, but who's making sure that they're still gonna be there when you get back? Like, I'm sure that maybe these aren't the only people in Norman's like faction, right? But yeah, that's the only thing that I'm like, like, guys, you didn't just leave them alone, right? And so I'm wondering about that story, like, and I wonder if that's also why there's been some sort of like shortage lately, because I think that the majority of the meat that the lower class demons eat are from the mass production farms, where they don't necessarily try to make the humans intelligent. They're just trying to like pump out as many as possible, which is really fucked up and really sad when you think about it. Yeah, so you have this guy's face, and then you have like her eating the demon meat, which I think was a really like interesting, like, it's all just a circle, you know? The demons eat humans, the humans eat demons, like, and I was like, right? Like, it's so, like, it's almost frustrating, but it's a very interesting, like, literary thing that they're doing. I wouldn't even know the word for it, and I don't think it's even ironic. Like, it's just interesting that it's just like, oh yeah, like, we're eating the demons back, and it's just like, why are y'all like this, right? The demons that, yes, did want to hunt the kids down, but wanted to do so their kid brothers didn't die. Yeah, so Barbara just goes nuclear on her, right? And then, like, she starts breaking the table so we can see where, like, the mutation thing's coming in. And again, I sort of wonder if it's a case where the humans were actually being mutated to have demon attributes, like demon super strength and things like that. Like, if humans could make demons be stronger or be a stronger type of demon, could humans have the attributes of a stronger type of demon as well? Like, I think that that's an interesting thing to think about. I think I talked about that earlier. But yeah, like, oh god, like, oh, this scene, right? Like, I think I've explained it to death. You guys understand what I'm saying, right? You both have family you wish to save from the house, right? Eradication is the most certain way. And I'm just like, right? Again, like, is it the most certain way? And so I'm just like, it's just so hard hard to watch because I feel for them. I understand that they went for mistreatment, but it's just so hard. It's just so hard to see the characters talk this way, and it's just, it's uncomfortable almost. And so Norman comes in and says, Vincent, Celio, about the experiment, right? And so again, where's that fourth person that had the bag over their head? Like, I think Norman's really, really sketchy right here, and he immediately stops talking about it when he sees that his friends are here. So I think that he's doing things that his friends wouldn't necessarily approve of. This isn't a meal, it's revenge, and I really like this facial expression. This is the one I was talking about earlier when I said that the animation in this episode was really, really good. I think that, like, I just really love that face there, but I think that it's true, and, like, it's a cycle of revenge, and again, like, that cycle of vengeance, it's the exact thing happening in Attack on Titan, and so I love the anime this season. I love the message that they're going for in all of these anime. But Emma also wants to believe the best of them, right? Like, hey, it's not just, like, getting back at people, right? Like, they care about their family, right? And so I feel like that's probably actually true. Like, on some level, it's revenge, but they also care about their families, too. And so I feel like that the struggle for her is that they are not, like, wholly bad people either. Like, they aren't wholly bad people who just want revenge. They, too, also want to help their families. Their siblings are getting shipped out. So I feel like for Emma, the struggle is that no one in this situation, and I feel like just in life, right? The struggle with life, guys, I'm gonna lay down some wisdom, right? The struggle with life, like in our everyday life, the struggle is that seldom are people villains, right? Like, we see villains in, like, you know, movies and in media and in TV shows, but in real life, like, the average person that we will interact with, right? Like, obviously, there are exceptions. There are serial killers, very bad people out there, right? But at the same time, right, in terms of, like, who we will interact with, like, in, like, our normal day-to-day lives, seldom are there villains, are there straight villains that you can just hate, right, in your everyday life. Like, and so I feel like that Emma's struggle is the fact that at the same time, she cannot necessarily see them as villains either, because yes, they want revenge, but on the other hand, they also want to help their families. And so I feel like the struggle for Emma is that she wants something. I feel like that with a lot of the characters, not just in this show, but just with protagonists in general, right? It's easy to see, like, a target or to see a person and put all that blame on one person. It's easy to point at them and be like, see, there's the villain, and as soon as we defeat the villain, everything will be okay, and put that whole burden on that one person. And so I feel like for Emma, it would almost be easier for her if this group was like bad people, right? If they were villains, if she could point at them and say, all they want is revenge, they're just senseless killers, right? But she can't say that, and she can't say that because they also want to help their family. They're also thinking about their sibling. I just feel like it's very interesting, the message that they're getting across with that here, because it's just so true. Like, no, they're not the easy villains to point at either. Like, at first you think that the demons are the easy villains to point at, right? Like, for example, I guess going all the way back to the first season, right? You see Isabel and you're like, Isabel, yes, she's the villain. But then you see what happened to her and why she is who she is today and in that position. And then you go, okay, well, Isabel's not, but the demons are. Then you see that there are good demons. You see that there are demons that don't eat people, that there are demons that want to, you know, be with their families. And you look at them and you're like, okay, I guess demons aren't the villain, but then it's the demons at the very top that are the villain, right? And it just keeps going and going until you find that most of the people that you run into are not the villains. I still think that the people at the very, very top, they're probably the villains, right? The king and the aristocracy, or like, you know, like the rich people, right? I think the rich people will always be the villains if they're being the oppressors, right? Like the people at the top of the system, the people in the monarchy, right? That are making all these decisions. Like, I think that they'll be the villains probably, right? Especially if they know that there's a way, right? That they know that there's a way to make it so demons don't have to eat humans, but they don't want to adopt that to line their own pockets. Like, I feel like that then they'd be the villain, right? Like, if they care more about being rich than everybody's health, like, then they'd be the villain. If they willingly withhold the information that would stop the cruelty of the farms while also giving all demons, like vitamins, right? They would be the villain. But as we continue going, we see that there are no easy fingers to point at, right? Like, you look at them and Emma could think like, well, okay, I'm like going into this wanting to go against Norman, Norman, it would be so easy if these people could just be bad people so I could point at them and say, Norman, your new friends are villains, you know, they're only fixated on revenge. It would be so easy, but she can't, and she can't because they're not just villains at all. They're also people that are just worried about their siblings. I really like this, right? Like, it's wrong, but at the same time, the suffering they endured is unmistakable. And so again, it's that like people are more multifaceted than being able to point at somebody and make them the enemy. We can't tell them not to hate the demons. Hatred can't stop once it's begun. I don't necessarily agree with that, and I think that Ray, he's basically like fulfilling his role as the pessimistic one compared to Emma, who's obviously the more optimistic one. And she even says like, isn't that more of a reason to, and then she's cut off, right? Like, if that's true, if there is a chain of hatred, isn't it up to us to break it? Then Norman comes back out, he shows us the drug, again, kind of looks like something that you could just like open and it goes into the air. Maybe he would spill it on people. I don't necessarily understand the distribution of this yet, but yeah, and so it kind of looks like it's in a perfume bottle, like spritz, spritz, spritz. That would be so bad. But Norman, do you think that the drug will work on all demons? What do you mean? And so I feel like that Norman isn't asking this genuinely, because it seems like he actually knows about Mujika. He's just not very happy about it, right? There are demons that won't degenerate even if they don't eat humans. So that drug might not have an effect on them. And also, how do you two know about that? So his concern isn't like, hey, like, what are you guys talking about? He already knows about it. So he's like, how do you two know about that? So I feel like that he actually wanted to hide that information from them on purpose so they wouldn't do this exact thing. So he was planning on basically keeping them in the dark about this element because he's like, hey, if I tell them that, maybe they'll get wishy-washy. Can't have them go wishy-washy on me, so I'll withhold information so they go with my plan. Then Norman says, where did you hear about that? We met them, right? Met them. And then he's like, and I feel like not being able to see his face is very important here. And I feel like that shadows have also been very important sometimes. Like you see, I don't remember when it was, but you have this shadow of like Mujika and she's like in the light, but she's also in the darkness. Then you have like, obviously it's a placement of the light, right? Like light just works like this. But then you have Ray mostly in the light, Emma like sort of half in the light and half in the darkness. And then you have Norman mostly in the darkness, but with a little bit of light. And again, that could just be shadows, but I think that there is some sort of like metaphorical stuff going on here in terms of like, hey, like this character is mostly in the darkness. Like there's a bit of light in them, but they're mostly in the darkness. Whereas Ray, I think at this point is clear-headed because the logical thing to do is to find out if there's a way where demons can survive without eating humans, while Emma's still 50-50 because she feels very unsure of herself. Was it a demon who looked like a girl? Norman? And then he says, no way. And then we get this face, the evil-blooded girl is still alive, and we don't actually know what any of this means. And so you see Norman does not look like himself here. And I don't think he's even horrified. Like, some people said he's scared. I don't think he's scared. I think he's enraged. I think he's mad. And what does this mean exactly? I think that this means that, first of all, Norman has clearly, like, run into Mujika before. In terms of evil-blooded girl, again, like, some people think that that just means, like, heretic girl, right? But at the same time, I wonder if like Mujika has some sort of like status of some kind that she's not telling us, whether that is an idol or a god. And then the other thing we have to think about is that if Norman knew about this, right, like it seems like that maybe he tried to use it on her and it didn't work. And so I wonder if like that could be the thing, is that he's finding out for the first time that he already knew that some demons don't eat humans, but he used this on Mujika and Sonju because he was just like, oh, whatever, it'll work, and then it didn't. And so maybe this is him finding out for the first time that it didn't work. And I wonder if Mujika and Sonju could somehow be involved in like Norman's whole backstory. I hope that we get a flashback episode next week. If we don't, like if we do, if we don't, I don't know. But I feel like that considering the end, like, OP and everything, and that Norman is actually in the end song, it's possible that maybe, like, Mujika was there at that laboratory. Like, you see, like, scenes where there's just children, and they're, like, standing, like, on these, like, cold floors and stuff, and you actually see that some of them do die, and so I wonder, like, if it's possible that Mujika was actually there in some capacity for some reason, but then she defected. So I wonder if that scene in the end OP is actually the end OP. We could probably call it the ED, right? That's the ending, right? So anyway, like the ending song, you can actually see like Mujika and Sonju are like walking around, and then you see like cuts of different places, and then that's where I think you see the window. That's what it looks like is on Norman's body, like that same window frame, and then you see the kids like in this room, and they're all like on these cold floors, and so I wonder if that could have actually been the thing, and maybe Mujika like helped them escape or something, and then like they were like, no, we don't want your help, and then they, you know what I mean? And then they tried to like use the drug on them thinking it would work, and then they didn't. Like, it's just so interesting to think about like what Mujika's doing, what's she doing there, what's this gonna mean, right? Like, will she help, right? Because it does seem genuinely like now that she's met some more humans, she doesn't want to eat them, and so I wonder if maybe when Norman met her, she had a different attitude and she was actually working with them, but then after meeting Emma, I wonder if she'll actually play a part in actually helping them instead of being against them. But I don't know. That is basically all from me, guys. I hope that you guys enjoyed my analysis. I cannot wait for next week's episode. I'm really excited. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.